The one big beautiful bill has passed. A devastating loss for low-income Americans, a tax cut to billionaires, the end of Medicare. What you've been hearing may be wrong, and I want to help you sort it out. What's in the bill, and how can Christians expect to benefit or lose from it? This is The Deep End on Tim Hatch Live. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Deep End, and this is where we talk about the news of the day through a pastoral worldview, and I'm your host, Tim Hatch, and I'm so glad that you are here, and if you are here for the first time and you feel so inclined, consider subscribing to the channel, liking this content, and clicking that notification bell to get notified when we present you new content. So we've got to discuss and separate fact from fiction regarding the new law of the land that was signed on July 4th, America's 249th birthday. Happy birthday, America, by President Trump. Let's get to the facts, the big, beautiful facts that Christians should know about the big, beautiful bill. First, it's 1,000 pages long, which means no one is reading the whole thing. We have to surmise what's in the bill and summarize what's in the bill. A couple of keys. It makes the Trump tax cuts from 2017 permanent, and every American should be happy about that because those tax rates before 2017 were quite high, even for low-income Americans. It also promises no tax on tips up to $25,000, no tax on overtime, and interest on some auto loans is now tax deductible. A temporary $500 increase in the child tax credit will bring it to $2,500 for 2025 through 2028. Student loans are changing. That's a good thing. The funding of abortions is ending for a little bit, and you might have to actually prove you need government assistance before getting government assistance. Whew, that's a short summary. He signed again on July 4th. The Senate voted 51-49. The House 218-214. Only 2 Republicans voted against the bill, so this was along party lines. And a focal point of the package, again, is Medicaid. Will Americans be losing their health insurance and their social safety nets when it comes to medical care if they are in need? A $700 billion reduction in spending is in the bill. This is from the AP. New work requirements for Medicaid. To be eligible, you would have to have 80 hours per month of work, education, or service for able-bodied adults without dependents. That would be if you don't have a child in your care, you have to prove that you're trying to get work or working at least 80 hours per month. Is that too much to ask? The new requirements would also not kick in until January 1st, 2029. So everybody telling you to freak out today, maybe take a step back and actually read what's in the bill. So people would have to also verify their eligibility for Medicaid twice a year rather than just once. I don't know about you, but I do think we need to have some rein-in stipulations for whether or not people get free money from all the tax money that goes to the federal government. And if they can work, they should work. That is a value of Scripture from 1 Timothy 5:18. If you do not work and provide for your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. Americans, it's time to take responsibility for yourself and not expect America to take responsibility for you. Now, the White House put out a list of myth versus fact on this article. The myth that they addressed, one big tax break for billionaires. Actually, they claim that middle class and working class Americans will get the largest tax break in history, more than $10,000 a year back in their pockets. Another myth that they take on is the idea that it takes from the poor to give to the rich, when in fact they claim that low-income workers stand to receive the largest percentage reduction in tax liability ever. Another myth is that it kicks American families off Medicaid. And as the president has said numerous times, they claim there will be no cuts to Medicaid. The one big beautiful bill protects and strengthens Medicaid for those who rely on it: pregnant women, children, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income families, while eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's the thing we got to pay attention to: waste, fraud, and abuse. These are endemic to our society, and we cannot survive as a country if we all look to Washington, D.C. to fix all our problems. That is not the intended purpose of a federal government. I think that if the founders were alive today, they would be shocked at what the federal government has become for so many people. We are supposed to be a country of independence, where you are provided the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those pursuits are your responsibility, not the government's responsibility. But let's go over 5 big facts about how Christians should probably be on board with what was passed in the one big beautiful bill. And again, no law is perfect. No law is divine. No law is sanctified. It's a law, and it's going to probably be changed in future laws and future Congresses and future presidencies. But here's what we can say right now about what is passed as of July 4th, 2025. Fact number 1, Planned Parenthood, the abortion factory, has been defunded for 1 year. So this is a small victory 1 year of defunding of Planned Parenthood, they stand to lose a ton of money. $500 million. Planned Parenthood is a large abortion provider. According to Live Action's news site, there was a record-breaking amount of abortions last year with $800 million of taxpayer funding, up 13% from the previous year in our country. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not comfortable at all as a Christian with our tax dollars funding abortions and going up in that funding. So I can get on board with this. By the way, these numbers are this was so harmful to Planned Parenthood's intended purposes to kill the unborn. They have promised and pledged to sue the Trump administration upon passage of the bill. Fact number 2, school choice programs have now been empowered. If you are a fan of choosing for your child where they can go to school, then you should like this bill. Of course, if you're in a blue state, you are going to be limited by state regulations. But for the increasing number of states that are embracing school choice programs, this bill is a very positive boon to that effect. So individual taxpayers will be eligible now for tax credits for donations they make to organizations that award scholarships so K-12 students can attend private schools. That tax credit is capped at $1,700 per year. This move represents a departure from traditional public education funding models and potentially redirects resources from public schools towards private education. And as a Christian who has watched the moral decline of public education, I can get on board with this as well. By the way, add to that this benefit, a new one from Trump called, and I hate the fact that he names it after himself, but Trump Accounts. This is a $1,000 startup fund for your child's future that you can put forward, and it is a tax-deferred investment account for every American child born between 2025 and 2028, so you have a limited amount of time to get in on this. It tracks the S&P 500, and families can contribute up to $5,000 annually with the goal of fostering early investment and savings. The accounts are projected to grow significantly over time, potentially increasing initial $1,000 investment by more than 490 times over 65 years due to compounding interest and gains. They will activate on July 4th, 2026, coinciding with the 250th anniversary of America. When you track Social Security and its payouts, a lifetime of paying into Social Security and what you get in return, it is a fraction of what you would have gotten in return if you put that same amount of money into an S&P 500-based index fund. You would be a multimillionaire if you just had your own money and put it in this S&P index fund and retired with that. But whenever the government gets involved, you lose out. You got to take a lifetime to learn this. Eventually it comes around and you learn. Anyway, they're trying to do something called empowering parents to have children. If you add this new Trump account of $1,000 and then $5,000 per year investing, and the increased $500 child tax credit, which brings the total to $2,500 of a tax credit for every child that you have, what Trump is trying to do is to get Americans to have kids. I can get on board with that. I don't know about you, but I'm on board with that 100%. By the way, when it comes to school choice, this is becoming an increasingly popular position to hold. More than 30 states now, including the District of Columbia, have enacted some form of school voucher program. In other words, Americans are largely starting to question whether the public school system is the best option for their students. And states are getting on board. Even New Hampshire, amazingly, recently just signed into law a school voucher program. Fact number 3, homeschoolers are now empowered. Financial incentives from the government. 529 plan overhaul boosts homeschool families. Currently, 529 plans provide tax-free growth and withdrawals for qualified expenses such as college tuition or up to $10,000 annually for private K-12 tuition. However, federal law excluded homeschool expenses unless states classify homeschooling as a private schooling endeavor. Now, since the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of homeschool students has risen from 2.5 million to 4 million students. So now the One Big Beautiful Bill's expansion would enable homeschool families to use 529 funds tax-free, ensuring they don't sacrifice quality education for financial reasons. So that's a good thing, right, for homeschool families? And if you're a homeschool family, you should be on board with the One Big Beautiful Bill. Fact number 4, higher education loans are being reined in. A wholesale revamping of the student loan program. This is an outrageously expensive program that politicians campaign on by promising to cancel student loan debt. You see, the government got involved in the student loan program, and then politicians campaigned on canceling those loans. That's how you win stupid voters. So the proposed plan would eliminate all existing student loan repayment plans and introduce only two options: a standard option with monthly payments spread over a 10 to 25-year period, and a repayment assistance plan that is generally less favorable than the plans it would replace. However, in addition to these changes, the bill seeks to repeal the Biden-era regulations that made it easier for borrowers to cancel loans if their colleges engaged in fraud or abruptly closed. In other words, you take out the loan, it's on you to repay the loan, not the government to bail you out. Furthermore, the legislation proposes a tax increase of 21% on certain university endowments. So when Harvard gets billions of dollars of money from the government, they have to pay taxes on that. Higher taxes on that, and I can get on board with that. So those students in those left-leaning schools shouting free Palestine last year, well, those schools are now on the hook for more taxes. And moreover, now college and university programs that fail to demonstrate that their graduates can earn more than an adult with only a high school diploma may face loan restrictions. It also caps the amount students can borrow. That's a good idea, don't you think? Caps Parent Plus loans at $65,000 per student. And I, as a parent of two college-age kids, can appreciate that law. And as far as a new repayment plan, starting in July 2026, new borrowers can enroll in a new income-driven repayment plan. Under the plan, borrowers will pay back their loan over 30 years. Some low-income borrowers could see payments as low as $10. So it seems that this bill is actually going to benefit some low-income people. And that is good news for those who are being fed the lie that this is a tax break for billionaires and is going to take money from the low-income members of our society. Fact number 5, and finally, immigration enforcement has now been fully funded. There has been a massive increase of up to $170 billion, depending on how you read things, to support Trump's border and immigration goals. This includes detaining and deporting a record number of people from the U.S. The final bill allocates $45 billion for immigration detention centers, as well as about $30 billion to hire more ICE personnel for transportation costs and to maintain ICE facilities, among other spending. So Trump is following through with his campaign promises to make sure the government takes care of those who are actually in the country, not those who enter it illegally. Now, to that end, as a Christian pastor, I can get on board with that as well. I saw a few progressive Christians on Twitter suddenly love quoting the Old Testament and Leviticus, particularly Isaiah, which I find ironic when a progressive Christian quotes the Old Testament, because progressive Christians love to hate on the Old Testament when it comes to sexual mores, like that whole "don't lie with a man as one would lie with a woman" passage in Leviticus. Oh, they hate that one. And when Isaiah talks about homosexuality, they don't like it. But when Isaiah talks about things like, this passage that a Reverend Benjamin Kramer quoted on his X account, Isaiah 10, 1-2, "Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the orphan." Now, this is a classic move by progressive Christians to quote selectively from the Old Testament, from select passages that they like, while ignoring and never quoting passages that they may not like, such as Isaiah 3:9. "For the look on their face bear witnesses against them. They proclaim their sin like Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to them. They have brought evil on themselves." Are we going to believe both of those passages in Isaiah, or are we just going to pick and choose the ones that we like for political expediency? A couple more highlights from the big, beautiful bill, and a simple ChatGPT search would have provided you these details. Here we go. The bill includes increased funding and tax credits aimed at promoting adoption. There are grants to support faith-based adoption of foster care agencies. I can get on board with that. There are religious liberty provisions that strengthen certain protections for faith-based organizations that provide social services, ensuring they can receive federal funds without modifying hiring practices based on religious belief. I can get on the board with that. Expands conscience protections for healthcare providers who decline to participate in abortions or gender transition procedures. It also tackles human trafficking and border measures, providing increased funding for anti-trafficking units as part of the larger border security package. And there are foreign aid adjustments as well in the bill, cuts to certain international aid programs, including family planning services like abortion in other countries abroad. That's going to be cut, and then expands funding for some international religious freedom initiatives. And hopefully those Christians who are being persecuted in other countries will now benefit from this bill. That's the big 5 points that I have for you and some minor points as well. Now, some people are going to continue to claim that this is going to attack the poor. Well, let's just take a look at the data points, shall we? These are the data points of the poverty level in America from 1990 to 2023. You will notice that the low point for poverty levels in our country was the pre-pandemic 2019 year at 10.5%. This chart also bears witness to that fact. Poverty increased substantially from 2019 through the COVID pandemic. What happened during the COVID pandemic? Our government gave you free money. And whenever the government gives you something for free, make no mistake, it proves not to be free, and you end up paying for it on the back side. Just ask your local college student who signed up for those loans and now is in deep, deep debt because the government promised what it could not deliver. These are the facts, ladies and gentlemen, and facts matter. It's what I always ask our research team to get. Show me the receipts. No law is going to be perfect. No law is going to satisfy everyone in a huge, diverse country like ours. Federal money is going to be spent no matter what we do because all of the districts have their own little side items and pork projects that they want to be paid for by the federal government. And to get their votes, you have to give them money. That is just how politics are. Do I like it? No. Hopefully, this content has helped you sort out some of the facts from the lies, some of the political posturing from the absolute truth. And you are more than welcome to let me know in the comments below how you agree, disagree, or what you have found that may actually counter what I've shared. If you like this content, please consider giving us a like, a subscribe, and clicking that notification bell. Get notified every time we go live. Other than that, I will see the dependables on the extra content right now.